Welcome back to Deed Talks, where ordinary marriages reveal the sacrifices no one sees until it is too late. Tonight's story is called I Sold My Wedding Gold to Save My Husband's Company, Then He Brought His Ex-Girlfriend Home. I believed giving up something precious would save the life we had built together. I did not understand that Daniel was already learning how easily he could take from me. The jeweler placed my gold bracelet on a small digital scale and waited for the numbers to settle. "Are you sure you want to sell all of it?" he asked. I looked down at my bare hands. The bracelet had been the last piece from the wedding set my mother gave me 8 years earlier. I had already sold the necklace and earrings 2 months before, when Daniel's company missed its first payroll. "Yes," I said. "All of it." The jeweler gave me a final price. It was less than I had hoped, but enough to cover most of what Daniel needed by Friday. I signed the receipt before I could change my mind. Outside the store, I called him. He did not answer. I tried again while sitting in my car, holding the envelope of cash on my lap. His phone rang until voicemail picked up. "Daniel, it's done," I said. "I sold the bracelet. Call me when you can." I waited for a few seconds before ending the message. For the previous 6 months, his logistics company had been surviving one emergency at a time. A client delayed payment. A delivery truck needed repairs. Fuel costs increased. 2 employees threatened to leave because their salaries were late. Daniel always said the next contract would fix everything, and I always believed him. When we first met, he had been working in a warehouse and studying business management at night. He talked about building a company where drivers were treated fairly and small businesses were not ignored. I admired that about him. Years later, when he finally opened Hartwell Logistics, I helped him choose the name, created invoice templates, organized driver schedules, and answered customer emails after finishing my own job at an insurance office. Daniel called me his secret weapon. At least he used to. By the time I arrived at his office that afternoon, most of the employees had already gone home. Daniel was standing beside the conference table, studying a spreadsheet with both hands pressed against the wood. "You sold it?" he asked. I held out the envelope. His shoulders dropped with relief. "That should cover payroll and part of the truck payment," I said. He took the envelope but did not open it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he came around the table and pulled me into his arms. "I will buy it all back," he whispered. "Every piece. I promise." I closed my eyes. "You don't have to buy back the same jewelry." "Yes, I do." He leaned away and looked at me. "When this company succeeds, we'll have everything we gave up. A better house, savings, maybe even that trip to Italy you always wanted." I laughed softly. "I stopped talking about Italy years ago. That doesn't mean I forgot." That night, we ate takeout noodles on the office floor because Daniel said he did not want to waste money at a restaurant. We talked about the future as though it were already waiting for us. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Then his phone lit up beside him. A message appeared from someone saved only as Daniel turned the screen face down before I could read more than the first 3 words. "I handled the contract." I stared at Daniel's phone for half a second too long. He noticed. "Something wrong?" he asked. "No," I picked up my noodles and tried to sound casual. "Who's V?" Daniel glanced at the phone, then slid it into his pocket. "Vendor. That's their name." He smiled, but it felt delayed. "No, just how I saved the contact." I nodded as though the answer made sense. At the time, I wanted the evening to remain what it had been 5 minutes earlier. Cheap food on an office floor. Daniel promising that our sacrifices would mean something one day. I did not want to become the suspicious wife who ruined a good moment over 3 words on a screen. So I let it go. The next morning, I opened the drawer in our home office where I kept household records. Inside were mortgage statements, tax documents, medical bills, and a growing folder labeled Hartwell Logistics. I added the jeweler's receipt to it. The folder was already thicker than I remembered. There were copies of bank transfers from our joint savings account, receipts for office furniture I had purchased on my credit card, and records of 2 personal loans taken in my name. I had also printed emails showing the hours I spent negotiating with suppliers and correcting invoices during the company's first year. I did not keep those documents because I distrusted Daniel. I kept them because I was organized. That was what I told myself. Later that afternoon, Daniel came home earlier than usual carrying a paper bag from my favorite Italian restaurant. "What's this?" I asked. "A proper thank you." He set out pasta, garlic bread, and a small piece of tiramisu. He even lit the candle we usually saved for anniversaries. For a while, he felt like the man I had married. He asked about my day. He told me payroll had gone through. One of the drivers had sent him a message saying his family could finally breathe again. "That happened because of you," Daniel said. I looked down at my plate. "Because of us. Because of you," he repeated. "I know what you gave up." The words warmed me more than I expected. After dinner, I brought the Hartwell folder to the kitchen table. Daniel's expression changed the moment he saw it. "I thought we should put everything in writing," I said. "Not because I'm worried. Just so the company records are clear." "What exactly do you want in writing?" "The money I contributed. Maybe as a loan? Or a percentage of ownership." "Whatever makes sense." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "We're married, Claire." "I know. So why would you need a contract with your husband?" "It isn't about trust. It's about accounting." His jaw tightened slightly. "Do you think I'm going to steal from you?" "No, that isn't what I said." "It sounds like what you're saying." I closed the folder. Daniel rubbed his face and exhaled. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm exhausted. Once the new contract is finalized, we'll sit down with the accountant and document everything properly. Promise." He reached across the table and covered my hand with his promise. I wanted to believe him, but that night, when I returned the folder to the drawer, I noticed one of the company bank statements was missing, and I knew I had not removed it. The missing bank statement stayed in my mind all weekend. I searched the home office twice, then checked the recycling bin, the kitchen counter, and even Daniel's car. I found nothing. When I asked him about it on Sunday evening, he barely looked up from his laptop. "You probably filed it somewhere else." "I keep every company document in the same folder." "Claire, it's one statement. It's the statement showing the money from my personal loan." Daniel stopped typing. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the hum of the ceiling fan. "I took it to the office," he said. "The accountant needed a copy." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't think borrowing a piece of paper required permission." His tone made me feel unreasonable, even though I had only asked a question. Then he closed the laptop and softened his voice. "I'm sorry. I've been under pressure." I knew that sentence well. It had ended dozens of difficult conversations during the past year. I sat beside him on the sofa. "Did the new contract go through?" Daniel's expression changed immediately. "We got it." I smiled. "You did?" "A 3-year distribution agreement. It's the biggest contract we've ever had." For a few seconds, the missing statement no longer mattered. Daniel pulled me into his arms and laughed against my hair. "We made it," he said. "This is the turning point." The following Friday, Hartwell Logistics held a small celebration at the office. Someone brought champagne. The drivers ordered pizza, and Daniel gave a speech thanking the employees who had stayed through late paychecks and broken trucks. I stood near the back, holding a plastic cup. "We survived because people believed in this company before it gave them any reason to," Daniel said. I waited for him to look at me. He did, briefly, but he never mentioned the loans, the savings, or the jewelry. After the speech, one of the dispatchers, Marcus, approached me. "You must be relieved," he said. "More than I can explain. That consultant really came through." "What consultant?" Marcus hesitated. "Vanessa, the one who arranged the introduction." The name landed with uncomfortable familiarity. "Vanessa Reed." His face told me the answer before he spoke. "I assumed you knew." Vanessa had dated Daniel before we met. Their relationship had lasted nearly 4 years, and according to Daniel, it had ended because she cared more about status than stability. I found him near the conference room. "Vanessa helped secure the contract?" Daniel glanced toward Marcus, who immediately walked away. "She knew someone at the client company." "You never mentioned that." It wasn't important until the deal was signed. She's your former girlfriend. She's a business consultant. Now, the distinction did not comfort me. Daniel reached for my hand. Claire. She made an introduction. That's all. Is she the person saved Asvi? His fingers loosened around mine. Before he could answer, the conference room door opened. A woman stepped out wearing a fitted gray suit and a Hartwell Logistics visitor badge. Her hair was shorter than it had been in the old photographs, but I recognized her immediately. Vanessa smiled at Daniel first, then she looked at me. You must be Claire, she said. I've heard so much about your sacrifices. Behind her, on the conference table, sat an access card printed with her photograph. It did not say visitor. It said executive consultant. For a moment, I forgot how to respond. Vanessa stood in front of me with one hand resting lightly against the conference room door, as if she had every right to be there. The badge clipped to her jacket looked permanent. Official. Daniel stepped between us before the silence became too obvious. Vanessa will be helping us through the expansion, he said. The new contract is bigger than anything we've handled before. How long have you been working here? I asked her. Vanessa glanced at Daniel. About 6 weeks. 6 weeks. I looked at my husband. You told me she made one introduction. She did, Daniel said. Then the client asked for additional planning, and you didn't think to mention that? This isn't the place. Vanessa gave me a small, careful smile. I understand this may feel awkward. You understand? Claire, Daniel warned quietly. I set my untouched champagne on the nearest desk. No. I'd really like to hear what she understands. Vanessa lowered her voice. Daniel was worried you might misinterpret the situation because of our history, so the solution was to hide it from me. No one hid anything, Daniel said. I looked at the executive access card again. The celebration continued around us. Employees laughed near the pizza boxes. Someone opened another bottle of champagne. No one appeared to be listening, but I could feel people deliberately avoiding our side of the room. Vanessa adjusted her badge. I'm here because the company needs a stronger corporate structure, she said. That's all. I helped build its structure. The words came out. Before I could stop them, Daniel's expression tightened. You helped in the beginning, he said. In the beginning. As of the late nights, personal loans, and wedding gold belonged to an earlier version of the company that no longer counted. Vanessa looked toward the conference table. We should probably finish reviewing the expansion projections. Daniel nodded. I'll be home later, he told me. You're staying? We have work to do. I wanted him to see how humiliating that moment was. I wanted him to say Vanessa could wait and walk me to the car. Instead, he turned back toward the conference room. I left without saying goodbye. Over the next month, Hartwell Logistics changed quickly. New trucks appeared in the parking lot. Daniel hired more drivers and moved into a larger office. He replaced his old car with a black SUV because, he said, clients expected the owner of a successful company to look successful. At home, however, nothing improved. The personal loans were still in my name. My credit card balance remained unpaid. Whenever I asked about repayment, Daniel said the company needed to reinvest every available dollar. We're finally growing, he told me one evening. This is not the time to pull money out. I'm not asking you to pull money out. I'm asking when we're going to document what I put in. He loosened his tie and sighed. Why do you keep turning our success into a fight? Our success? Yes, Claire, ours. Then why wasn't I invited to the investor meeting tomorrow? Daniel looked away. I had found the event on our shared calendar by accident. The entry listed dinner at an expensive downtown restaurant. It's a business meeting, he said. I worked on this business for years. You don't work for the company anymore. The sentence was so simple that it took a moment to hurt. The next morning, Hartwell Logistics posted an announcement online. The photograph showed Daniel and Vanessa standing beside the new company logo. The caption praised Daniel's leadership and Vanessa's strategic vision. My name was nowhere in it. I told myself the announcement was only marketing. Companies simplified their stories all the time. Investors did not care who had answered customer emails at midnight or whose credit card had paid for the first office printer. They wanted polished photographs and confident titles. Still, I read the caption 3 times when Daniel came home that evening. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open. "You saw the post," he said. It was not a question. I did. The marketing team wrote it. Did the marketing team decide Vanessa had strategic vision? Daniel placed his keys on the counter. "She helped secure the largest contract we've ever had, and I helped keep the company alive long enough to get it." He pulled out the chair across from me but did not sit. "I'm not denying that. You just don't say it where anyone can hear." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "Can we not do this tonight? Because of your investor dinner?" His eyes opened. "I saw it on the calendar. It's not a social event." "Then why does the reservation say 12 guests? Investors, department heads, and consultants." "So Vanessa is going. She works for the company. And I don't." The silence that followed gave me my answer. Daniel finally sat down. "Claire, these people are discussing financing and expansion. It would be uncomfortable for you. Why? Because you're not involved in the daily business anymore." I almost laughed. "I stopped being involved because you changed the passwords and stopped forwarding the invoices. That happened because we hired professionals." I looked at him across the table and realized he genuinely believed that explanation should satisfy me. "Are other spouses attending?" I asked. "No," he answered too quickly. The next evening, I stayed home and ate reheated soup alone. At 10:30, I checked my phone and found several photographs from the dinner posted by Hartwell Logistics. 2 wives were clearly visible. One sat beside the operations director. Another stood with her arm around an investor. Vanessa sat beside Daniel. She wore a black dress and a gold company badge instead of the temporary card I had seen before. In one photograph, Daniel leaned close while she spoke into his ear. In another, their shoulders touched as they raised champagne glasses. I sent him the picture. "You said spouses weren't attending," he called less than a minute later. "I didn't know they were bringing anyone." "But you knew Vanessa would be there. She was presenting the expansion plan, and she had to sit beside you." "Claire, please don't turn a seating arrangement into something it isn't." I heard laughter behind him. Then Vanessa's voice said his name. Daniel moved somewhere quieter. "I should have explained better," he said. "I'm sorry. It was not a full apology, but I was tired enough to accept it." When he came home after midnight, he kissed my forehead and promised we would have dinner together that weekend. The next morning, I visited the office to bring him the tax documents he had requested. Marcus met me near reception. "Good timing," he said. "Has Daniel decided where Vanessa's staying?" I tightened my grip on the folder. "What do you mean?" Marcus's expression changed. "She told us she's moving back permanently." For several seconds, I could not speak. Marcus seemed to realize he had said too much. "I thought Daniel told you," he said. "Told me what?" He glanced toward the hallway leading to Daniel's office. "Vanessa said she's ending her lease in Chicago. She's joining Hartwell full-time." My grip tightened around the tax folder. "Did she say where she plans to live?" Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Not exactly." That answer stayed with me all afternoon. Daniel did not return my calls, so I left the documents with reception and drove home. I tried to tell myself there was a reasonable explanation. Vanessa could rent an apartment. She could stay in a hotel while looking for one. Her decision to move had nothing to do with my marriage. By 7 that evening, I had almost convinced myself. Then I heard a vehicle pull into our driveway. Daniel entered first, carrying a suitcase. Vanessa followed him with 2 more. I stood in the kitchen doorway, still holding the dish towel I had been using to dry my hands. "What is this?" I asked. Daniel set the suitcase near the stairs. "Vanessa needs somewhere to stay for a few weeks." "No," he looked at me as if I had interrupted him before he finished. "Her apartment arrangement fell through." "No," I repeated. Vanessa remained near the front door. "I can find a hotel," she said, but she made no move toward her luggage. Daniel shook his head. "That would be a waste of company money." Then she can pay for it herself. Claire, this is my home. Our home. He corrected. Then why did you make this decision without me? Daniel lowered his voice. She's here to help us manage the expansion. She needs to be close to the office. The office is 20 minutes away. Vanessa finally stepped forward. I understand why you're uncomfortable. I looked at her. Please stop telling me what you understand. Her expression hardened for only a moment. Daniel moved between us. This is temporary, he said. She'll use the guest room until she finds a place. The guest room is not available. It's empty. That doesn't make it available. His jaw tightened. I had seen that look before. It meant he believed I was creating a problem he had already solved. Claire, the company cannot afford distractions right now. I stared at him. You brought your former girlfriend into our house. And I'm the distraction? This is exactly why I didn't tell you earlier. The words landed harder than shouting would have. Vanessa looked down. But Daniel continued. You make everything personal. She's here because she has relationships we need. Investors trust her. Clients listen to her. And what do I contribute? He hesitated. That hesitation was worse than any answer. You supported me when things were difficult, he said at last. Supported. Past tense. I looked at the suitcases lined beside our wedding photograph. Take them back to the car. Daniel folded his arms. No, it was the first time he had ever refused me so directly in our own home. Vanessa picked up the smallest suitcase. I'll stay somewhere else tonight. Daniel took it from her. You're staying here. Then he turned to me. You need to decide whether you're going to help this company succeed or keep punishing me for having a past. I looked at the man whose employees had been paid with money from my wedding gold for the first time. I wondered whether saving his company had only taught him that I would accept anything. Vanessa stayed. Daniel carried her suitcases upstairs while I stood in the hallway, unable to decide whether I was more angry at him or ashamed of myself for remaining there. The guest room was across from ours. I heard closet doors opening, hangers scraping against the rail, and Vanessa thanking Daniel as though he had offered her a room in a hotel instead of a place inside our marriage. That night, I slept in the study. Daniel came to the doorway shortly after midnight. Are you really going to sleep in here? I pulled the blanket higher over my shoulder. You made the guest room unavailable. He leaned against the frame. This doesn't have to become a crisis. It became a crisis when you brought her home. She has nowhere else to go. She has a salary, business contacts, and enough influence to secure a multi-million-dollar contract. She can find a hotel. Daniel rubbed his forehead. You're acting like I brought her here because I wanted her close, didn't you? His hand dropped. That's unfair. He left without answering. The next morning, I woke to voices in the kitchen. Vanessa was seated at the table wearing one of Daniel's company sweatshirts. A cup of coffee rested beside her laptop, and several printed reports were spread across the place where I usually ate breakfast. Daniel stood at the stove making eggs. For years, he had claimed he did not know how to cook them without burning the edges. Morning, Vanessa said. I looked at the sweatshirt. My blouse got coffee on it, she explained. Daniel said I could borrow this. Daniel placed a plate in front of her. There's enough for you too, he told me. I'm not hungry. Vanessa glanced at the documents. We're reviewing the revised investment plan at our kitchen table. Daniel sighed. The office internet is being upgraded. I opened a cabinet and reached for a mug. Vanessa noticed the pale mark around my wrist where the gold bracelet had once rested. That was part of the jewelry you sold, wasn't it? She asked. I turned slowly. Daniel stopped moving. What did you say? The wedding jewelry. Vanessa looked toward him. Daniel mentioned that you sold some pieces when the company was struggling. Daniel discussed that with you. He was explaining the early financing. I faced my husband. You told her? It wasn't a secret. It was personal. Vanessa gave a quiet laugh that she quickly disguised as a cough. What's funny? I asked. Nothing. Say it. She closed her laptop. I only think people romanticize sacrifice in business. Selling jewelry is emotional. But serious companies survive because of real investors, proper networks, and strategic decisions. The room became very still. Daniel looked down at the frying pan. I waited for him to correct her. He did not. That emotional sacrifice paid your employees. I said, I'm not denying that, Vanessa replied. I'm saying it didn't build what the company is now, Daniel finally spoke. Let's not argue before work. I looked at him. She just dismissed everything I gave up. That's not what she meant. Vanessa remained silent, allowing him to defend her. Something inside me shifted not dramatically, but permanently. I had spent months asking whether Daniel still appreciated me. That morning, I understood I had been asking the wrong question. The real question was whether he respected me enough to protect my place in his life, and his silence had answered it. I waited until Daniel and Vanessa left for the office before opening the home office drawer again. The Hartwell folder was still there, but several documents had been rearranged. I knew because I always kept the bank records in chronological order. Now the pages were uneven, and the statement showing my largest transfer had been moved to the back. I spread everything across the desk. The jewelry receipts totaled more than I had allowed myself to think about. The loans in my name were larger than our remaining savings. There were also payments for truck repairs, insurance deposits, office equipment, and software subscriptions. I had not simply helped Daniel during a difficult month. I had financed the company's survival. I called Rachel Cole, the accountant who had handled Hartwell's books during its first 2 years. She answered on the fourth ring. Claire. Hi, Rachel. I'm sorry to call without warning. You don't have to apologize. Is everything all right? I looked at the documents covering the desk. I need to understand how my contributions were recorded. There was a pause. What did Daniel tell you? That we would document everything after the new contract. Rachel exhaled slowly. Can you meet me for coffee? We met that afternoon at a cafe across town. Rachel arrived carrying a thin laptop bag and looking more nervous than I expected. I left Hartwell 3 months ago, she said after we sat down. I didn't know that. Daniel said the company needed someone with more corporate experience. Vanessa? No, a new finance director, she recommended. Rachel opened her laptop. I kept copies of the records I was responsible for. Not confidential client data, just work papers and emails showing what I entered and why. She turned the screen toward me. My transfers were listed under liabilities unsecured. Personal loan from related party. What does that mean? I asked. It means the company owes the money, but there is no collateral and no ownership attached. So I don't own any part of Hartwell. Not according to the company documents I saw. My stomach tightened. Daniel told me we would decide whether it was a loan or equity later. Rachel gave me a sad look. He had already instructed me to record it as debt. When? Before you sold the necklace. I stared at the date on the email. Daniel had made the decision weeks before asking me for more money. Rachel clicked another folder. There's something else. A shareholder agreement appeared on the screen. Daniel still controlled most of the company, but a newly issued percentage belonged to Vanessa Reed Consulting. She has ownership, 8%, with the option to earn more if the expansion targets are met. I read the page twice. When was this signed? 3 weeks before the contract announcement, the same period when Daniel had been ignoring my calls and turning his phone face down. Rachel folded her hands. I warned him that issuing equity while your contribution remained undocumented could become a serious problem. What did he say? That you were his wife and would never challenge him. The sentence hurt because it sounded exactly like something Daniel would say when he believed loyalty and surrender were the same thing. I closed the laptop halfway. Did he bring Vanessa back after the company started succeeding? Rachel hesitated. No, I looked up. She had been advising him for months, Rachel said, long before the contract. Daniel asked me to keep her name off the preliminary reports because he said you might misunderstand. The pattern was no longer hidden. Daniel had not excluded me after success changed him. He had used my sacrifice while quietly preparing a future in which I had no place. I printed every document Rachel had shown me: the shareholder agreement, the emails, the accounting notes, the dates proving Daniel had classified my money as an unsecured loan before asking me to sell the rest of my wedding jewelry. I placed the papers inside the Hartwell folder and drove home. Daniel's SUV was already in the driveway when I entered. I found him and Vanessa in the living room reviewing a presentation on the television. My wedding photograph had been moved from the side table to make space for Vanessa's laptop and coffee. Daniel looked at the folder under my arm. "Where have you been?" "I met Rachel." Vanessa closed her laptop. Daniel's face changed. "Why?" "Because someone needed to explain my own money to me." I placed the folder on the coffee table and opened it to the shareholder agreement. "You gave Vanessa 8% of the company." Daniel glanced at her before answering. "It's performance-based equity. You gave her ownership while refusing to document what I contributed. You have a loan on the books, a loan you decided on without telling me." His voice became quieter. "Claire, we can discuss this privately. This is my house. She's living in it. She owns part of the company I helped save. I think privacy ended a while ago." Vanessa stood. "I'll give you to some space." "No," I said. "Stay." She stopped. I turned back to Daniel. "I want the full amount I contributed formally acknowledged. I want a repayment schedule. And I want Vanessa out of this house tonight." Daniel stared at me as though I had become someone unfamiliar. "We don't have enough cash available to repay you now. The company just leased 3 new trucks. Those generate revenue. And my debt does not matter because I'm your wife." "That isn't what I said. It is what you planned." I showed him the email Rachel had saved. Daniel read the line where he had written that I would never challenge him. His expression tightened, but he did not apologize. "Rachel had no right to give you internal records. She had every right to show me records involving my money." Vanessa folded her arms. "If Claire begins making demands during expansion, it could damage investor confidence." I looked at her. "You don't get to advise me about the consequences of recovering what belongs to me." Daniel stepped closer. "Enough. Vanessa is not leaving." The room went silent. I had expected anger, excuses, perhaps another promise. I had not expected him to choose so clearly. "What did you say?" "She's essential to the company. I will not jeopardize everything because you feel threatened." "I feel betrayed." "You're being emotional." I removed my wedding ring. Daniel's eyes dropped to my hand. "Claire, don't be dramatic." I placed the ring on the coffee table beside the documents. Then I walked upstairs and packed one suitcase. Daniel followed me into the bedroom. "Where are you going?" "I don't know yet." "You can't just leave." I zipped the suitcase. "You brought another woman into our home. You gave her ownership in the company I financed. Then you told her she mattered more than my marriage." "I never said that." "You didn't have to." At the front door, Daniel's voice hardened. "You'll come back when you realize you have nowhere else to go." I looked at him one last time. That sentence did not frighten me. It decided something for me. I left the house with one suitcase, the Hartwell folder, and the knowledge that I would never again build a future under someone else's name. I spent my first night away from Daniel in a roadside hotel 20 minutes from our house. The room smelled faintly of cleaning spray, and the heater clicked every few minutes even though I had turned it off. I sat on the edge of the bed with my suitcase still closed and the Hartwell folder beside me. My phone kept lighting up. Daniel called 6 times. His first message said, "Come home so we can discuss this calmly." The second said, "You're making a private disagreement look worse than it is." By midnight, his tone had changed. "You cannot threaten the company because you are angry with me." I did not respond. The next morning, I called my older sister, Megan. We had not spoken honestly about my marriage in years because I had spent too much time defending Daniel whenever she questioned our finances. She answered immediately, "Claire." I left. There was a brief silence. "Where are you?" "A hotel." "Send me the address." "I don't need rescuing." I know, she said. Send it anyway. Megan arrived with coffee and helped me find a small furnished apartment near her neighborhood. The rent was higher than I wanted, and the kitchen was barely large enough for one person. But the landlord accepted a 3-month lease when I received the keys. I stood inside the empty living room and felt both relieved and terrified. For the first time in 8 years, every bill would be mine alone. I still had my job at the insurance office, but most of my salary went toward personal loans and credit card payments connected to Hartwell. I spent the next week calculating exactly how long I could survive. Then a former supplier called me. His name was Peter Lang, and he owned a regional packaging company. I had helped resolve several of his delivery problems during Hartwell's early years. I heard you're no longer involved with Daniel's company, he said. That's correct. Are you doing consulting? I looked around my apartment at the folding table I was using as a desk. I could be. Peter needed help reorganizing routes, reviewing shipping invoices, and reducing delays. It was the same kind of work I had performed for Hartwell without a title or salary. This time, I gave him a written fee. He accepted without negotiating. That first payment was not enough to change my life. But seeing my own name on the invoice did something Daniel's promises never had. It proved my work held value even when it was separated from him. Over the next month, Peter referred me to 2 other businesses. I worked before my insurance shifts, during lunch breaks, and late into the evening. Soon, I began drafting a plan for my own logistics company. I used the scheduling knowledge and operational skills I had developed over years. But I avoided Hartwell's confidential client lists, pricing files, and internal documents. I wanted independence, not revenge. When Daniel learned what I was doing, he came to my apartment. You're starting a competing company? He asked from the hallway. I'm building something of my own, using everything you learned from me. I almost laughed. You mean everything I helped create? His face hardened. You're proving Vanessa right. You're willing to destroy Hartwell because our marriage is struggling. For one painful moment, guilt reached me. Then I remembered my wedding ring sitting beside Vanessa's ownership agreement. I'm not destroying your company, I said. I'm simply done sacrificing mine. My first major client came 3 weeks after Daniel's visit. Peter introduced me to a small household products manufacturer called Alder and Finch. Their deliveries had become increasingly expensive, and Hartwell Logistics had recently raised its fees while reducing customer support. I met the owner, Laura Finch, in a conference room above the company's warehouse. We contacted Hartwell twice, she said, sliding a stack of invoices toward me. They keep telling us the new pricing reflects premium service, but our orders are arriving later than before. I reviewed the documents. Several routes overlapped. Some trucks were leaving half empty, while other deliveries had been outsourced at higher rates. The problems were familiar because I had spent years fixing the same issues at Hartwell. I can reduce unnecessary mileage, I said, but I won't promise a number until I inspect your schedules and speak to your warehouse manager. Laura nodded. That's already more honest than the last proposal we received. 2 days later, she hired me. I registered my company as Northline Operations and signed the contract at the folding table in my apartment. The agreement was modest compared with Hartwell's new accounts, but it was mine. I called Megan as soon as the documents were complete. You have your first real client, she said. I had consulting clients before. This one has your company's name on the contract. I looked at the signature page again. That difference mattered. Within the first month, I reduced Alder and Finch's shipping delays and helped them renegotiate a regional carrier agreement. Laura introduced me to 2 local retailers, and I began looking for a small office. Then Daniel called. You approached Alder and Finch? No, they approached me. They were a Hartwell prospect. They were a Hartwell customer. That makes it worse. I leaned back in my chair. They left because your service declined. You had access to their account history years ago. I did not use Hartwell's files, pricing, or client list. You expect me to believe this is a coincidence? I expect you to accept that businesses can choose who they work with. His voice dropped. You're stealing from the company you helped build. The accusation hurt more than I wanted it to. I'm not stealing anything. Vanessa's speaking with our attorney. About what? Protecting Hartwell from unfair competition. The following morning, I received a formal letter accusing me of using confidential business information. It demanded that I stop contacting Hartwell's current and former clients for several minutes. I sat at my desk reading the same paragraph. Then I called an attorney Rachel had recommended. After reviewing my records, invoices, emails, and the timeline of Alder and Finch's approach, he shook his head. They can threaten legal action, he said. That doesn't mean they can prove misconduct. Keep documenting everything. The advice reassured me, but it did not solve my larger problem. To serve the new retailers, I needed additional software, warehouse space, and at least one employee. I applied for a small business loan using my contracts and projections. The bank rejected me. My debt-to-income ratio was too high because the loans I had taken to save Hartwell were still in my name. I left the bank carrying a rejection letter caused by Daniel's company while trying to build one capable of competing with it. The bank rejection forced me to slow down. For 2 days, I considered telling Laura that Northline could not handle the additional retailers. I drafted the email 3 times and deleted it each time. On the 3rd morning, Rachel called. I heard Daniel has been talking about you, she said. What is he saying? That you're unstable. That you're using the separation to damage Hartwell. I closed my eyes. Is anyone believing him? Some people are. That afternoon, one of the retailers postponed our meeting without suggesting another date. A second potential client stopped answering my emails. Daniel was not only trying to protect his company, he was trying to make sure I could not build one. I called him. He answered with a tired sigh. Claire, stop talking about me to clients. I'm correcting misinformation. What misinformation? That you built Hartwell. I never said I built it alone. You're implying it. I'm telling people what I contributed. And leaving out the fact that you were my wife, not an employee. The sentence made me grip the phone harder. So none of my work counts because you didn't pay me. That isn't what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. Daniel was quiet for a moment. If you shut down Northline, we can resolve the financial issues privately. I almost could not believe him. You'll repay me if I stop competing with you. I'm saying we should stop hurting each other. You brought Vanessa into our house. You gave her ownership. You threatened me with legal action. Now you're damaging my reputation. His voice hardened. You left. I left because you made it clear there was no place for me. I ended the call before he could redirect the conversation again. That evening, Rachel came to my apartment with a cardboard box. Inside were dated emails, early operating manuals, route planning spreadsheets, and supplier correspondence. My name appeared throughout them. You created more of Hartwell's early systems than Daniel admits, she said. I don't want confidential information. These are copies of documents you authored or emails sent directly to you. Your attorney can decide what is appropriate to use. At the bottom of the box was an email Daniel had sent Rachel during Hartwell's first year. Claire understands the operations better than I do. Run any scheduling changes through her first. I read the line twice. He had known my value before success made acknowledging it inconvenient. The next morning, my attorney sent Hartwell a formal response rejecting their accusations and requesting repayment records, ownership documents, and disclosure of payments made to Vanessa. Daniel called within an hour. What are you doing? What I should have done months ago. You're going to make all of this public. That depends on whether you keep pretending I contributed nothing. 2 days later, Northline's software provider suspended my account after Hartwell challenged my payment method through a shared business card Daniel had never removed. For 6 hours, my clients could not access updated delivery schedules. I sat on the floor of my small office, surrounded by printed routes, wondering whether I had taken on more than I could survive. Then Laura arrived carrying her own laptop. Tell me what needs to be done, she said. By midnight, we had rebuilt the schedules manually, for the first time. Someone had chosen to stand beside me without asking me to disappear first. The next morning, my attorney called. Daniel's side agreed to financial mediation, he said. And Claire, the documents they'll have to disclose may prove far more than the amount they owe you. The mediation took place in a conference room at a law office downtown. Daniel sat across from me with his attorney. Vanessa was not present, although her name appeared repeatedly in the documents stacked between us. For the first hour, we discussed the money I had transferred to Hartwell. Daniel's attorney acknowledged that the company had recorded it as a loan but argued that no repayment date had been agreed upon. My attorney placed the jewelry receipts on the table. She sold personal wedding gifts after. Mr. Hartwell represented that the money was necessary to keep the business operating, he said. At the same time, he was negotiating an ownership agreement with Miss Reed. Daniel shifted in his chair. That agreement was tied to performance, he said. It was signed before the major contract became public. I replied, because Vanessa helped secure it. And I helped keep the company alive long enough for her to receive part of it. Daniel looked toward his attorney. The next set of records concerned payments made to Vanessa Reed Consulting. Her monthly fees had started 4 months earlier than Daniel had admitted. Then my attorney found something else. Several expenses had not been paid directly by Hartwell. They had come from our joint household account. A relocation deposit, temporary housing in Chicago, airfare, a furniture delivery. I stared at the statements. You used our money to move her here? Daniel leaned forward. Those were business expenses. I planned to reimburse the account. You never told me. The company didn't have enough available cash at the time, but you had enough money to give her equity. That is not the same thing. No, I said. It's worse. His attorney requested a break. Daniel and I remained in the room while both attorneys stepped into the hallway. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, Daniel said, I never planned for this to become so ugly. You planned every part except my reaction. That isn't fair. You classified my money without consulting me. You brought Vanessa back without telling me. You paid her expenses from our account. Then you assumed I would accept it. He rubbed his hands together and stared at the table. I thought you would understand that the company had to come first. Why? Because it always had. I waited. Daniel looked up. You always found a way to make things work, he said. Even when you were upset, you stayed. I thought once the company was stable, we could repair everything. The honesty of it was almost unbearable. He had not believed he was risking our marriage. He had believed my loyalty made the risk harmless. Our attorneys returned, followed by Hartwell's outside finance counsel. He placed a new document on the table. The company's board had been informed that Daniel issued equity to Vanessa while using undisclosed marital funds to cover her consulting and relocation costs. They are requesting a formal internal review, he said. Daniel sat upright. You contacted the board? No, my attorney replied. Your financial disclosures did. By the end of the meeting, Hartwell agreed to acknowledge the full amount of my loan and begin negotiating repayment. But the board's investigation would continue separately, outside the building. Daniel caught up with me. Claire, this could destroy the company. I looked at him. No, the truth might change the company. Then I walked away, understanding that I no longer had to protect him from consequences he had chosen himself. Daniel called me 3 days after the mediation. I need to speak with you in person, he said. I think we've said enough. The board suspended Vanessa. That stopped me. What happened? They reviewed the consulting agreement and the relocation expenses. They said I failed to disclose a conflict of interest. You did. I know. His voice sounded different. Not softer exactly. Smaller. We met the next afternoon at a quiet cafe near my office. Daniel arrived without his usual suit jacket. He looked tired, and for the first time since I had left, he did not begin by defending himself. The board removed Vanessa from all executive responsibilities, he said. They're reviewing whether her equity agreement should remain valid. And the company? We lost 2 investors. 1 expansion project is on hold. I waited for the familiar accusation. It never came. Daniel placed a folder on the table. Inside was a proposed repayment schedule for every dollar I had contributed, including interest. There was also a letter acknowledging my operational work during Hartwell's early years. I should have done this before you asked, he said. Yes. I should have put your name on the company. My name was never the main problem. I know that now. He looked down at his hands. Vanessa is moving out. I almost laughed at the timing. She should never have moved in. I told myself it was practical. I told myself you were jealous because that was easier than admitting I had stopped treating you like my wife. The words were what I had once wanted to hear. Now they felt late. Daniel pushed another document toward me. If you sign this agreement, the company will repay you immediately from a new financing arrangement. I read the first page. The repayment terms were fair. Then I saw the final condition. I would have to close Northline and agree not to operate a competing business for 5 years. I looked up. You're still trying to make my future part of the price. It's not like that. It is exactly like that. Clear. Hartwell is vulnerable. Northline is taking clients we need. Clients are choosing me. You could come back. The calf seemed to grow quieter. Come back where? To the company. To us. You want me to shut down my business and return to Hartwell. As a partner this time. Real equity. A title. Everything you should have had. For one painful second, I imagined it. Our old house. The company restored. Daniel finally acknowledging me in front of everyone. Then I imagined sitting in another meeting, wondering whether my place depended on his permission. No, I said. His face tightened. You haven't even considered it. I considered it for 8 years. I'm trying to fix this. You're trying to restore the life that worked for you. Daniel leaned back. What do you want from me? I want the repayment without conditions. I want the divorce finalized fairly. And I want you to stop treating my independence like damage to your company. His eyes filled, but he looked away before any tears fell. I still love you. I believed him. That was what made the decision difficult. I still love parts of who we were, I said, but I can't return to a marriage where I only matter after I leave. I placed the proposed agreement back in the folder. Daniel did not ask me to stay when I stood. The next morning, his attorney sent a revised offer. The non-competition condition was gone. The repayment remained. All that was left was my decision about the marriage. I signed the divorce papers 6 weeks later. There was no dramatic courtroom scene. Daniel sat across from me in a mediator's office, read each page carefully, and signed where his attorney pointed. The house would be sold. Our remaining joint debts would be divided according to the settlement. Hartwell would repay my documented contributions through an initial lump sum followed by scheduled payments over 18 months. Northline remained entirely mine. Before we left, Daniel slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was my wedding ring. I found it where you left it, he said. I held it between my fingers but did not put it on. Thank you. He looked as though he wanted to say more. Instead, he nodded and walked out with his attorney. The board investigation at Hartwell ended 2 months later. Vanessa's equity agreement was cancelled after the company concluded that Daniel had not followed proper disclosure procedures. She left the business and moved back to Chicago. Daniel remained at Hartwell, but no longer held complete control. The board appointed a chief financial officer and required independent approval for major contracts and ownership decisions. The company survived. It simply had to survive without my silence. Northline grew more slowly than Hartwell had, but it grew honestly. Laura helped me secure a small line of credit by agreeing to a longer service contract. Peter referred 2 more clients, and I hired my first employee, a dispatcher named Naomi, who had left a larger company after years of being ignored. On our first day in the new office, Naomi looked around at the mismatched desks and second-hand chairs. "This is it?" she asked. "This is it." She smiled. "I like it." I did too. A year after I left Daniel, Northline opened a second location. We were still smaller than Hartwell, but several clients said they chose us because we answered the phone, explained our prices, and never treated small businesses as though their problems were inconvenient. Those were the same principles Daniel and I had talked about when Hartwell was only an idea. The difference was that my name now appeared on the documents. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was the old folder containing the jewelry receipts. For a long time, I had seen them as proof of my foolishness. Now I understood them differently. Selling my wedding gold had not been the mistake. I had given it freely because I loved my husband and believed we were building something together. The mistake was continuing to sacrifice after Daniel stopped treating my sacrifice as something worthy of care. Love can ask us to give. It should not require us to become invisible. I placed the receipts back in the folder and locked the drawer. Outside my office window, the North Line sign glowed above the parking lot. It was not large or impressive, but it belonged to me. I made myself a cup of coffee, turned off the lights, and locked the office door. For the first time in years, going home did not mean preparing myself for another argument or wondering who had been given my place. It meant entering a quiet apartment filled with things I had chosen. The divorce did not erase everything I felt for Daniel. Some memories still hurt. Some mornings, I still reached toward the empty side of the bed before remembering why it was empty. But peace did not arrive because I stopped caring. It arrived because I finally stopped abandoning myself to prove that I cared. Thank you for spending this evening with Deed Talks. Wherever you are listening, remember that rebuilding your life does not erase what you gave, it simply gives that sacrifice a new meaning. Rest well, and join me again for another story.